Now, we recognize Senator Risa Hontiveros for the privilege hour.
Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po, Mr. President at mga kasama. In line with the ongoing crackdown on corruption, I'd like to call the attention of the Senate to the sports facilities our government built for the 2019 Southeast Asian Games. Upon closer inspection, there may have been a remarkable degree of collusion in the funding and construction of this project at New Clark City. And I will present some points as to why this should merit a full-scale investigation. First, I believe this partnership has the signs of being a fake joint venture. Second, this has the signs of being financed by a possible behest loan from a government bank. And third, they may have sidestepped public bidding laws, and now the country may have been left with a gigantic white elephant in Central Luzon. Let's discuss my first point, Mr. President, that the government may have entered into a fake joint venture. Sometime in 2018, the BCDA and Malaysian infrastructure developer MTD Capital Berhad entered into what they called a joint venture agreement to construct the Seagames facilities in Clark. Pero joint venture nga ba talaga ito? Kung JV ito, dapat may ambag ang lahat ng kasali dito. Suriin natin kung ano ang inambag ng partners na BCDA at MTD Berhad. Ang ambag ng BCDA para sa joint venture ay ang lupang gagamitin para sa proyekto. Ang ambag naman dapat ng MTD Berhad ay ang kapital. 8.5 bilyong piso ang dapat na ilalabas ng MTD Berhad para sa construction ng proyekto. Subalit, ayon sa aming pagsasaliksik, mukhang hindi sa kanila nanggaling ang pera. Ang pera ay galing sa Development Bank of the Philippines na siyang nagpautang ng 9.5 bilyong piso sa MTD Berhad. Wala nang ang cash-in ang MTD Berhad, dinagdagan pa ng 1 bilyong piso ang proposal nila. At saan kinuha ng MTD ang pambayad para sa 9.5 bilyong pisong utang na ito? Sa income ba ng project? Hindi. Yang perang inutang ng MTD Berhad sa DBP, BCDA ang magbabayad sa halagang 11.1 billion pesos. Wala nang ang cash-in ang Malaysian company, pinatungan pa ng napakalaking interes at tubo. Ang perang dapat sana ay sa iba na lang ginugol ng gobyerno. At saan naman kinuha ng BCDA ang pambayad sa MTD Berhad? Sa income ng mga venue? Hindi rin, dahil wala pang malinaw na income ang project na ito. Kinuha ng BCDA sa bulsa ng taong bayan ang pambayad sa mga Malaysian developer. Kung susuriin ang 2019 budget, binigyan ng DBM ang BCDA ng 9.5 bilyong piso para bayaran ang utang ng MTD Berhad. Then, what is this supposed joint venture for? When BCDA paid the amount to MTD using public funds appropriated in the 2019 national budget. Punong-puno po ito ng bahid ng pagiging peking joint venture. Kaya itatanong po muli, Mr. President, ano ang ambag ng MTD Berhad dito? Mismong construction lang ang ambag ng MTD Berhad sa di umano'y joint venture na ito. Maging sa Office of the Government Corporate Council o OGCC at sa Commission on Audit o COA para sa kanila, hindi rin joint venture ang pinasok ng gobyerno dito. At habang nangyayari ang lahat ng ito, pinalitan ang hepe ng OGCC at biglang binawi ang una nilang opinyon. Para sa bagong head ng OGCC, above board ang transaksyong ito, taliwas sa dating sinabi ng opisina. This leads me to my second point, Mr. President. Bakit kinailangang mag-participate pa ang gobyerno sa isang joint venture para umiwas sa public bidding at lutuin ang pagpopondo sa project? Paano nakakuha ng 9.5 bilyong pisong loan sa DBP ang MTD Berhad ng ganun kabilis? 28 February 2018 nang pirmahan ang joint venture. And by 21 March, may 9.5 billion pesos na sila. 3 weeks. Very fast. Bakit kaya hindi ito magawa para sa ibang proyekto ng gobyerno? Hindi kaya na naglabas agad ng loan ang DBP dahil nilakad ng PCDA? At ano ang collateral na inilabas para dito? Nasuri ba ng mabuti ang capitalization ng MTD at ang cash flow ng project? Ladies and gentlemen, these questions then lead me to my third point. Hindi ba ito'y may bahid ng tinatawag nating BHES loan? Ano ang mangyayari kapag hindi pala kaya ng BCDA paglaanan ito ng budget? Iiyak na lang ang mga depositor ng DBP? At ano ang nabili ng taong bayan sa 9.5 bilyon na kinuha sa ating mga bulsa? Isang sports center na isang buwan pa lamang ginamit at malamang hanggang sa ngayon ay ginagastusan pa natin ng maintenance. Hindi kaya magiging white elephant ang mga facilities na ito? 9.5 bilyong pisong nagamit sanang panglaban sa COVID o kaya ay ayuda para sa kabikulan at iba pang mga rehiyon matapos ang bagyong Rolly. Bago ako magtapos, nais ko ring itanong, nasaan ang DOF, BSP, OGCC, GCG at DBM habang nangyayari ito? Sinunod ba nila ang mga mandato nilang pangalagaan ang interes ng sambayanan? During this privileged speech, I've asked many questions, Mr. President, but it is the public that deserves the answers. Salamat po, Mr. President at mga kasama.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Mr. President, with the indulgence of the sponsor, may I just ask a few clarificatory questions?
Certainly, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I also would like to apologize because I didn't really catch the entire speech. Actually, I didn't catch most of it except for the picture of the stadium that was built for the Southeast Asian Games. I was being distracted by the chair of the Committee on Finance and the chair of the Committee on Higher Education with their stories about some people. And they put on the record that they are still laughing as I speak. Anyway, on that note, Mr. Chair, so because I cannot ask, I cannot go into detail, no, because I did not know that Her Honor would be taking up this subject. But the project that Her Honor has flashed on the screen is very close to my heart. I am an athlete. I am also a national team player in my youth. And I was there during, I don't think I was there during the, what do you call that? When they, ano ba tawag doon yung corner? Groundbreaking ba yun? When they put the first, I wasn't there then, but I was there when there were only beams, and I continually checked on it in the days to come. Mr. President, this is a world-class stadium built in record time. with the advice no less than, if I'm not mistaken, and I can check for the record, World Bank and or ADB on how to finance and how to do this project. Mr. President, the Southeast Asian Games would not have been as successful as it was if we had only the dilapidated stadium of Rizal Memorial of Ultra. May I ask Her Honor if she has seen the place? Because the national track and field team, when they visited it around November, not sure, September, November, before the Southeast Asian Games commenced, they went there for the first time. Does Her Honor know that they cried when they saw the stadium? They cried when they had the opportunity to run on the turf. Bakit? Kasi dun sila nagpa-practice sa napakabulok na stadium. Ganon ang kalagayan. That's how we treat our athletes. Ilan lang ang Manny Pacquiao ng Pilipinas who has had the opportunity to raise himself and have sponsors. But not all sports are like boxing and basketball that have a strong following. Many of these athletes will never even be remembered. But on that day that we won the gold medal, the entire Southeast Asian countries gave their due respect to the Filipino athletes. I am embarrassed that we cannot even honor that. I am embarrassed that we choose to make a political issue out of a world-class facility. Kaya tuloy, wala nang mag-aabalang magpatayo ng matitino at kahanga-hangang mga infrastructure dito sa Pilipinas. Dahil magpatayo ka lang ng maganda, sasabihin na sa'yo na may kalokohan ka. So paano? Puro bulok na lang tayo para walang pumansin. Ganon. Paano magiging white elephant? Madam Sponsor, do you even know what are the conditions of our sports facilities? Para sabihin mong yung world class na yon magiging white elephant? Hindi nyo ba alam na pinasa natin ang National Academy of Sports? And doon pag-aaral, doon magte-training ang mga bata natin, mga future Manny Pacquiao. Paano naging white elephant? Sana naman mag-ingat naman kayo sa mga paratang nyo. Dahil yan na naman ang i-headlines. Di man lang natin binigyan ng konting parangal, konting respeto ang mga national athletes. Na alam nyo ba, kung hindi dahil sa bayanihan to, hindi pa magkakaroon ng allowance. Hindi thanks to PSC yan, Thanks to Speaker Alan Cayetano, Congressman Bambol Tolentino, and Senator Sani Angara. So hinahalo ko yung mga mukha ng mga athletes na to dun sa tinatawag niyang white elephant. Kasi that is the only reason why you put up such a structure for people. In this case, for young athletes. So I cannot separate their faces and their names from the structure that you now want people to cast doubt upon. Again, I do not have the details. Wala akong hawak na papel, but I have to stand up for BCDA, for the architects, for the engineers, for every single construction worker that's worked overtime. Madam Sponsor, alam nyo ba 24/7 nagtrabaho yon para makadeliver tayo sa Southeast Asian Games? Di ba mas kahihiyan yun na nag-umpisa Southeast Asian Games tapos hindi natapos yon? Nanood ho ba kayo? Nandun ako, nanood ako, nanalo tayo ng mga kung ano-anong event. Yung pole vaulter natin, he claimed the gold. Si EJ Obiena, he was supposed to compete in the Olympics. Pero hindi natuloy yung Olympics. At least, nagka-Southeast Asian gold medal siya, di ba? At least nanalo siya in his own country. Napanood siya ng tatay niya, na coach niya. Ganon ang kalagayan ng mga athletes, Madam Sponsor. Yung nanalo ng marathon, taga Cagayan de Oro siya. Umiiyak siya nung nakita ko siya after niya. Hindi niya akalain mananalo siya. Alam niyo bang na-lockdown siya dito for how many months? Hindi nakauwi. O baka sabihin niyo irrelevant na yun. Hindi irrelevant yun. Kasama yon sa mga sakripisyo ng mga athlete. Tapos ngayon, ang kaisa-isang nagawa natin for them, binibigyan pa natin ng mali siya. Kaya yan ang mangyayari sa bansa natin. Puro mali siya tayo, puro paghuhusga.
Mr. President, may I respond now? And
Yes.
the gentlewoman. Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, if the good colleague had caught more or most of my privileged speech, it probably would not have caused the good gentle lady as much distress. Maganda naman talaga yung mga facilities. Nobody's arguing against that. And sinuportahan ko rin yung itinayo natin by law na paaralan para sa ating mga atleta. World class nga naman yung mga facilities kahit tignan lang natin sa mga litrato. Pero baka mas world class pa kung binid out according to law. Yung mga itinanong ko, hindi pa akusasyon pero sinabi ko mga bagay na dapat alamin. Were not merely content of news reports or headlines. They had been, Mr. President, already the subject of opinions by the Government Corporate Council, by the Office of the GCG, the Government Commission on GOCCs, and very importantly, Mr. President, the Commission on Audit, na lagi naman nating ginagamit na gabay para sa pag-oversee ng tamang at optimal na paggamit ng government funds at pati sa pagsisiyasat ng ating mga proposed budget tulad ng ginagawa natin sa ngayon. Maganda talaga yung facilities, but does this excuse the possibility of cutting corners, which I repeat, Mr. President, my speech was not the first to raise questions about, pero may aktual na mga opinyon at observation bago sa araw na ito ng COA, ng GCG at ng Office of the Government, OGCC. And the COA findings themselves were adverse, Mr. President. Kaya it behooves us to consider the possibility of looking into them. Ang aking mga tanong na iniraise ay walang pagbabawas sa pagbibigay halaga natin sa ating mga atleta mula pambansa hanggang lokal. Hindi binabawi ang ating suporta sa education and athletic support sa ating mga athletes at student athletes. Ito ay panay tungkol sa inobserbahan ba o hindi ang mga ayon sa batas dapat na inobserbahan kung totoong joint venture yan o hindi ba dapat sa ilalim ng Build, Operate, and Transfer Law, kung kaya't mas mahigpit na bidding, at pag-iwas na ito ay naging bang isang behest loan. At pati yung tanong ko po tungkol sa ito ba ay magiging white elephant lamang, it was precisely in the body of my speech coached in the form of a question. Kasi ayaw natin na ang ganitong world-class or magandang facilities ay mahulog na lang sa ganyang status. Lalo na naging stage na siya ng pagkamit ng glory o karangalan ng ating mga atleta. So ito po, Mr. President, ay mga tanong na maaring unang beses ni-raise natin dito sa loob ng Senado, pero nauna na yung mga constitutional at executive bodies sa ganitong klaseng mga opinyon at obserbasyon. And I think it is well within the mandate of the Senate to also consider looking into these questions, Mr. President.
Mr. President, like I said, I do not have the details. Wala ho akong panahon sa ngayon na aralin yon dahil I am sponsoring CREATE and I am the Senior Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance. Pero pag pinagpatuloy pa ni Senator Risa sa ganitong panahon, na katulad nga ng sinabi ko, yung mga athletes na yan, na lockdown, hindi nakauwi, 10 buwan, walang allowance. 10 buwan, walang allowance. This is their livelihood. And you know, the only thing they have left is their pride. So when we do things like that, we slap them in the face. That is what we do, Mr. President. And when Her Honor chooses to use words like white elephant, you make the people who bother listening to us, if there are still people who bother to listen to us, the more that they question our judgment, the more that they question the things that we do to make those who need more in life, to give them a better life. And that is exactly what that project was all about. Ba't kakainin ba natin yon? Hindi. So, ba't tinayo yun? Kasi nga may purpose. We were in line to sponsor, to host the Southeast Asian Games. Was there enough time to go through all the steps? I don't know. But I am sure there's a logical reason, because the president of BCDA is one of those persons that is highly respected in this government. He was pulled in to assist the IATF with the testing, the capacity building, putting up quarantine centers. Hindi mag-aabala si Vince Dizon nang mag-cut short lang ng corners para lang batikusin ng ganito. Ginawa niya yon para mapatayuan ng may pagmamalaki namang stadium ang Pilipinas. So I leave it at that. I leave it at that, Mr. President. But I sincerely regret, inasmuch as we all have the right to stand up here for anything that we want to talk about. We do. Kaya pwede. Lahat tayo may right. Pero I sincerely regret na nagagamit ang floor natin para sirain ang napakagandang pangalan ng mga napakagandang mga proyekto na tinayo para lang naman bigyan ng kahalagahan ang ibang sektor ng ating bansa na normally hindi napapansin. They are normally training, like I said, umiyak sila nung tumuntong sila sa tarp nung track oval na yon. Umiyak sila. Sabi nila, wow, ang lambot. Sabi ko, ba't saan ba kayo nagte-training? Ma'am, dun sa track oval na sira-sira na, sa Pangasinan. Ha? Paano kayo nakarating ng Pangasinan? Wala na ho kami mapag-trainingan sa Metro Manila. And then their facilities, nakatira na rin ako sa Rizal Memorial. As I said, I was a national team athlete. Yung tinirahan ko sa Rizal Memorial noong 1983, awa ng Diyos, ganun pa rin ang itsura. Kung hindi pa natin pinatayo ang track oval sa University of the Philippines, which is open to all, inabot ng mga anak ko, 30 years after I graduated, the same track and football field ng UP. O so siguro si UP, sinundan nila by the letter every single step. Awa ng Diyos, inabot ng 4 na taon. Nag-graduate na yung anak ko, never niya na nakitang yung field na yon. That is how infrastructure projects in the Philippines go along. So if you don't want our people to dream, if we don't take a stand and give honor to what should be honored, the people who did right, then we'll just watch our country crumble because we're just going to be finger pointing every step of the way. And I take offense as an athlete, as a mother of athletes, as a mentor and as a friend of all these athletes, whose sole pride was to be able to see such a structure built in their honor, questioned and castigated in this manner. Salamat po.
Mr. President, hindi ginagamit, but we take the floor to hold people to account. No more, no less. At yung ganyang prinsipyo ay ni-raise na rin ng previous opinions and observations, as I said, ng GCG, ng OGCC at ng COA. And speaking of, was there enough time to do things by the book, to be sure not to cut corners, to observe all the processes under the law? Sigurado, Mr. President, there would have been time. Kasi ayon sa timeline, August 16, 2017 pa lang, ang BCDA ay unang tumanggap ng unsolicited proposal mula sa MTD Capital Berhad for the construction of the National Government Administrative Center o NGAC in New Clark City. So ibig sabihin po, Mr. President, a full 2 years bago na-consummate itong proyekto, there would have been all the time para siguruhin na nasusunod ang mga batas which I have cited in my questions. Yung mga batas tulad ng Build, Operate, and Transfer Law na may kinalaman sa tamang bidding at hindi yung i-label itong proyekto na isang joint venture. Yung batas nga tungkol sa bidding at procurement o new procurement law, yung mga batas sa ating banking sector na dahil sa ating kasaysayan ay nagsisiguro na hindi behest loan ang posibleng makuha sa ganitong mga proseso. At yung ibang mga batas na nagsisiguro na tama at optimally ginagamit natin ang public funds para sa patuloy na pagtataguyod ng ating public infrastructure, including sports infrastructure. So even on that point of time, Mr. President, which the gentle lady mentioned, I would surmise certainly there would have been enough time to do things by the book, observe all the nitty-gritty nitong mga batas na may kinalaman sa ganitong mga proyekto at proseso, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Well, just to add a little trivia. Of course, it's very known fact that I have been a national player of the Philippines since 1976 all the way to 1987. I do understand the points being raised, and more particularly about the athletes. But there is one thing that really got my attention in the facilities that were built. It was only then that I found out last Southeast Asian Games, for the reason that our swimmers always have a hard time against the foreign competitors. We always see the Olympic swimming pool. Yun ang ginagamit nila, Olympic-sized swimming pool. Yun ang competition, di ba? Yung pala, mayroon pang isa pa dapat na Olympic-sized swimming pool other than the one that's going to be used, which we now have. Dati wala tayo. Kasi dapat pala, bago mag-compete, tumitira na doon muna. Nagpa-practice muna doon sa isa. Kaya doble pala yun pag gayang gano'n. Anyway, the other countries had that before. Singapore and all that. Tayo yung nagtsatsaga sa may mga lumot doon sa ultra. So now, we not only have a top-level Olympic-sized swimming pool for international competitions, we also have an international Olympic-sized swimming pool for the training, not the official pool that is being used. Anyway, just trivia for the record. So, Majority Leader, Senator Cayetano, go ahead.
Mr. President, since you mentioned that by Olympic standards, you're right, that's a requirement that you have they call it a warm-up pool.
Yun,
So without that, you cannot get the proper accreditation. You will not receive that highest level of accreditation, and you will not be able to sponsor international competitions. So in fact, Mr. President, during the Southeast Asian Games, as it was happen, sa sobrang tuwa nung ating National Sports Association ng Swimming, they already said yes to host this international competition. I'm not sure if it was this year, so baka hindi nga natuloy because of COVID, no? Because they are now qualified to host those kind of swimming events, which we could not do before. Kung familiar kayo sa Rizal Memorial tsaka sa Ultra, hindi ganun ang swimming pool doon. And I'd also like to spread into the record, similarly for the track oval. So the ones that you would have seen, for anyone here who watched it, that track oval is the main track. Pag lumabas ka dun sa stadium, there's another track, Mr. President. Kasi ganun din, it is required that there is a warm-up track. And then, in addition to that, underneath the stadium, not really underneath because same level ng ground, inside the stadium, indoor, merong mga 100-meter din na track. So, pag matagal ka pa, doon ka magwa-warm up sa labas. Pag malapit ka na, pwede ka mag-sprinting dun sa loob. And then finally, in the main. All of this would not be accredited. Again, yung white elephant na inaabala nyo, Madam Sponsor, we can now host international competitions. And that will even be cheaper for our athletes because they don't have to keep going abroad. We can host. It brings glory to the country. Mura para sa ating mga athletes and coaches. May facilities naman doon para matulog. Hindi ko natapos yung kwento ko, pero yung sinasabi kong natutulog ako doon sa dorm, doon sa Rizal, na ngayon ganun pa rin. Now, we have world-class facilities. Nung nakita ng mga athletes, naiyak sila kasi mukha daw hotel yung kanilang kwarto. Ano sasabihin natin ngayon? Dapat hindi mukhang hotel yan. Dapat mukha lang kayong tabi-tabing dormitoryo. Di ba nila karapatan yon? Na humiga dun sa hindi iniipis, na humiga sa magandang kama, na magkaroon ng magandang banyo? So yan ang kine-question natin. Anyway, Mr. President, it's because of you na dinagdag ko to dahil nabanggit yung swimming pool. Dinagdag ko na rin po yung track oval. Thank you.
Right.
No, Mr. President. Mr. President, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. President. No, Mr. President, again, if the good gentle lady had caught the greater or most part of my speech, she would have understood what I am saying. It is not our honorable athletes who have poured their hearts out in the pool, on the track, on every terrain and equipment where they raise the flag of our country, who are in question here at all. I celebrate our athletes and they are people of honor and dignity, and certainly bilang mga kababayan natin, they would also not want such questions that have been raised by executive and constitutional bodies to remain unanswered conclusively and cast any shadow of possible corruption on the gold and the silver and the bronze they have brought to our country for the past many years, no? So let us continue to support our athletes, but also to honor them. Let us consider clearing all these questions about possible corruption once and for all. And since the good lady from Taguig mentioned the BCDA chair, well, even he is facing graft and corruption charges. So why is it something that the Senate could not consider looking into? So let us understand clearly what each one of us expresses when we take the floor to deliver a privileged speech. Klarong-klaro ko, Mr. President, yung mga bodies na inireiterate ko yung mga tanong sa kanila, BCDA, MTD Berhad, at ang DBP, at klarong-klaro rin yung mga batas na itinanong ko kaugnay nitong mga issue. Walang kinalaman po sa ating mga atleta, untarnished ang kanila pong mga tagumpay para sa ating bansa. Ang kailangan pang klaruhin ay itong mga issue na iniraise na dati ng COA at iba pa, at ngayong araw ay ni-raise ko rin sa floor. At saka lastly, papangit ba ang mga facilities natin kung ibinid out? Hindi rin naman, di ba? Salamat po ng marami, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Okay, Mr. President. I'd like to move to refer the speech of the lady senator to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, and secondary to the Committee on Sports. I so move, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. So deferred.
Moving to lighter matters, Mr. President. I'd like to move to take up Senate Resolution number 525, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Maybe ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure so that we can consider the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the text, the complete text of the said resolution.
Resolution congratulating His Excellency Shinzo Abe for his historic tenure as Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister and commending him for his significant contributions to strengthening and broadening the relations between Japan and the Republic of the Philippines.
Mr. President, we will recognize the
Mr.
sponsor, Senator Coco Pimentel, Quirino Coco Pimentel, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Coco Pimentel is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President and my esteemed colleagues, a pleasant afternoon to all. On September 15, 2020, His Excellency Shinzo Abe officially ended his premiership with an impressive track record, achieving a historic milestone as Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister. His 2 terms as Prime Minister, spanning a total of nearly 9 years, led Japan to stability and prosperity. His economic policies bearing his name, Abenomics, resulted in many successes for the good of the Japanese people. His distinguished political career earned global recognition, and his exemplary leadership gained a place in history. Prime Minister Abe's tenure as Prime Minister of Japan is also historic and significant because of his commitment to maintain a close relationship with the Philippines, which has brought our relations to where it is now, reinvigorated, strong, friendly, and cooperative. Prime Minister Abe has paid great attention and value to Japan's strategic relationship with the Philippines. He continued and deepened this strategic partnership and offered to be a partner in our peace-building efforts, particularly in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, by being involved in various mechanisms like the International Monitoring Team, the International Contact Group, and the Independent Commission on Policing, which has been very supportive in the rehabilitation efforts of Marawi City. Japan has also contributed to the upgrading of our defense security capabilities, particularly in maritime security, in the transfer of defense equipment and technology such as Philippine Coast Guard patrol vessels, high-speed boats, surveillance radars, and TC-90 maritime patrol aircrafts. During Prime Minister Abe's official visit to the Philippines, President Duterte declared that the Philippines and Japan were embarking on the golden age of their relations as Japan pledged official development assistance for the Philippines under the Build program in the amount of 1 trillion Japanese yen for the period 2017 to 2022. Under Prime Minister Abe, the total bilateral trade between the Philippines and Japan has been robust and strong, with Japan being one of the Philippines' top 3 trading partners and the Philippines' consistent top source of investments. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Abe, Japan has showed consistent support to the Philippines even amidst the former's own challenges during this time of the pandemic. It contributed to the Philippines' efforts against COVID-19 by inviting us to participate in the 42-country clinical trials of the antiviral drug Agad, donating also more than $3 million in emergency assistance coursed through the UNHCR, UNICEF, Red Cross, and granting a 50 billion Japanese yen emergency response loan and other assistance coursed through private donations. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, I would like to seek your full support for the immediate adoption of this resolution to congratulate and commend Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for his historic tenure as Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister and for his significant contributions to strengthening and broadening the relations between Japan and the Republic of the Philippines. Thank you very much, my dear colleagues.
Mr. President, can I make a manifestation?
Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized.
we request that we made co-author of the resolution. Thank you very much.
Senator Villar is made the co-author of the resolution, Senator Villanueva, and likewise Senator Angara. All right. Is that okay with you, Senator Pimentel, the main author and sponsor?
Yes, sir. Very much
All right.
welcome.
Mr. President, may I make a special
Your leader.
request to the good sponsor? If we can make all members of the Senate, it's a very laudable resolution. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was a very, very good friend to the Philippines and to the Filipinos. If it's okay with the good sponsor and author, can we be made all of us, not the whole, all members of the Senate, as co-authors?
I make the motion, Mr. President. If there is no
All right.
objection.
There is no objection. Thank you, Senator Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. President.
What
Can
is
we
the
talk?
pleasure now? Majority Leader, what is your pleasure?
Yes, Mr. President, we move to adopt Senate Resolution 525, subject to style, making all members as co-authors of the measure with the permission of the author. I so
Any objection? Hearing none, PS Resolution 525 is hereby adopted.
thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority Leader?
Thank you very much also to our distinguished colleague, Mike Kababayan and Silingan in Mindanao. Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Pia, if unless the crate is ready, or Mr. President, you're in the position there to talk to the sponsor if
I was
the
informed.
crate is not ready.
I was informed by Senator Pia Cayetano that she is awaiting the finalization of the proposals from Senator Recto, and
Okay.
therefore we are not ready at the moment.
Mr. President, just for a manifestation.
Senator Ralph Recto is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My understanding is that the Department of Finance is not ready.
Yes,
Because
correct.
they're ready, Mr. President.
I stand corrected. Aside from that, Senator Recto is awaiting the proposal. The Department of Finance is not ready. He's correct.
Yes, because I am ready, just for the record. So thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Recto, for...
Mr. President,
Senator Grace Poe, Mr. President.
yeah,
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, while we are awaiting, perhaps we can begin
Yes,
interpellations for
I was
cases.
about to say, Mr. President, since we're not, we're waiting for the Department of Finance. Anyway, I had a conversation, Mr. President, with our distinguished chairperson, Senator Pia Cayetano, this afternoon, and she graciously said if our colleagues are not yet ready, we don't have to rush this measure tonight. We can always come back after we approve the budget on second reading next week. And then the week after that, we will have really nothing. We will have nothing on our plate. We can go back to tackling crates so that we can come up with a very good measure that's not rushed, where all our colleagues have been heard and accommodated with, Mr. President. So with that, I would just call for the second item on the agenda, with the permission of the body. I move that we resume consideration, Mr. President, of Senate Bill number 1849 under Committee Report number 116. That is the fifth measure of Senator Grace Poe. I so move, Mr. President.
The motion is to for the consideration, right?
That is correct, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. So considered. You
We are
are
in the-
going to... What is the parliamentary status, may we ask?
We are in the period of interpellation, Mr. President, and I have no member listed to interpellate. I know there are several members who want to provide some amendments. Unless there are those who want to interpellate on the floor, Mr. President.
There are none, but there is a request here by the members of the Senate who are here on the floor to for a few minutes of suspension before we resume Committee Report 116. So
Okay,
if you
Mr.
don't mind,
President,
yeah.
I'm okay with that, Mr. President. Absolutely.
All right. Session is suspended for 5 minutes.
Salamat nga pala sa panonood mga katropa. Hit like and subscribe naman dyan. Hit nyo rin yung notification bell para updated ka sa mga bago naming videos.